so I'm making an impromptu video here in regards to the daytime running lights that I made or put on the car. I don't have this on a tripod or anything like that or the microphone, so hopefully you can hear me pretty well. When I put these cheap daytime running lights that also turn into sequential on the turn signal, when I did that, I would get intermittent blinking on my turning signal, the parking light, the corner marker lights, whatever you want to call it. What I assumed is the only thing that was tied into the factory harness as far as power was for the sequential turning lights. That's coming off of green on my 4-pin connector here. Again, you have to take this headlight assembly off to do work to it, so you might as well put a connector in there so you can take things apart. So what I did to alleviate the problem, and so far it seems to work, is I added a diode. Now this is a pretty big diode. It's the only one I have. I'll probably order a smaller one later, but it works. It'll still transfer power. But I put, if you notice, it's got a line side to one side of the black can in the center. That goes towards your light, the device, so that means the power will go from black to the line side, allow power to transfer through. My assumption and what I think that I was getting is feedback from this control module, and the CAN bus circuit didn't like that. So by putting this diode in there, what I'm allowing it to do is send power from the factory headlight harness to the control module, but does not allow any feedback from that control module at all. Now, I don't know if the feedback's coming from the constant power for my daytime running lights on those little strips, or it's coming from the flashers or the module. So by putting a diode on this one here that connects to the factory harness, that isolated everything outside to prevent any issues. Now, keep in mind, if you watch my video before, I fed the daytime running lights. They're blue in my case because I like color, and I got that constant power on. So whenever I fire the vehicle up, it constantly comes on. It's not controlled by the headlight circuit, because I think it's pretty cool during the daytime to at least be able to see the blue lights on there, and everybody seems to like it. So again, what you're going to do is just the turning signal portion of this daytime running light strip that you buy from eBay, you're going to put a diode in between the turn signal and the yellow wire, which indicates for the turning signal going to this control module. It'll keep from power back feeding into the CAN bus harness and giving you some issues on your factory lights, your turn signals, things like that. Now, if you happen to tie your daytime running light strip into your wire harness to activate or turn on with the headlights, then you're simply going to have to add a second one of these as well, and you'll add it to the red wire coming out, which is the positive constant, to turn those daytime running lights on. In my case, I didn't do that, so I'm just going to add one diode, and let's see what happens. Alright, got a lot of background noise. It's an active day in the neighborhood today. You can see this is a diode. It is partially wired in there. Heat shrink, just like I said, I always do. You're going to notice the red casing on it, because the diodes are pretty big. They have a long lead where they're tinned out. What you want to do is just strip off a casing from an old wire, slide it up onto that to give it some insulation. So that way when you wire it in, you don't have any exposure to getting anything grounded out when you don't want it to. So that's what you see there. There's one end put together. And again, just the casing from an old wire that I put in there, if it'll ever zoom in. There you go. To where it's going to keep it from grounding out. So let's get to the next side. Alright, so there's one of the solder joints that I did. You can see I just slid my heat shrink down on this cable here, the green cable, so I can slide it over there and put it on. Now, when you go to solder, just in case anyone hasn't seen any of my other videos, you want to place a solder under the wire and then feed your solder from the top. I call it painting. Whenever I describe how to do it to anyone, is you're basically heating the wires up from the bottom and then bringing your solder onto the top and allowing it to melt through the wire to where you don't get a cold solder joint, and it actually adheres across the entire joint. Now, I'll cut that little stray off. But you don't want to get a cold solder joint, because if you just get it heated up on the solder and you have a glob of solder on the soldering iron and you push it to the wire and pull it away, that did not heat the cables up enough to give you a good solid connection. So again, I call it just painting the wires. We'll go ahead, cut that little stray wire off, heat shrink it, and we'll be done. Alright, so there's a connector when it's done, going from the yellow wire into the diode, line going towards the light itself, soldered at the end. I'll go ahead and get this all taped up really well to where it stays clean and doesn't get water or anything like that. So, but that is the circuit that I added to it to prevent any feedback from that control module from these cheap day running lights that you get from eBay.